Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm your host, Christine Devlin Eck. Here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies, we explore and expand on conscious postpartum care. We navigate the overlap of caring for others and caring for ourselves. We honor the transitions, not only in giving birth, but in being alive. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Sacred Window podcast. I'm Christine Eck. I'm your host. I am so happy to be here today with a person that I've known for a number of years. Samantha Veitch is an alum of our program. She has hosted me on, her own amazing summits for pregnant and postpartum people. She is an Ayurvedic postpartum doula, an elimination communication coach. Her practice is called Emerging Wisdom Care. She's based in California and sometimes England, where she's originally from. Samantha is here today to talk to us about elimination communication, developing a routine for elimination communication with our babies during the sacred postpartum window specifically. So we're going to be talking about what elimination communication is, and then we're going to go on to talk about why this is actually really doable right away during the postpartum window, as opposed to maybe starting later, and what the benefits are of doing that. So Samantha, thank you so much for being here. It's so good to have you.
Hi, Christine. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, it's been around for a while, but a lot of people are still very new to the concept of it. And I would love for you just to begin by telling us, like, how do you, you do this in your practice. So how do you explain elimination communication to your clients?
So I live in a little hill town that's quite alternative. And so I find that most mums that I work with postpartum are very into this. They already know about it, so it's not a hard sell. I usually start with saying that it's tribal pottying, like the original potty training, although I don't really use the word training as much. So it's not like a new thing. This is like an age-old practice before we had diapers, and how we dealt with the needs of elimination of babies. So it's something very innate, something that we have within us, and there's something that we can be led by our children, our babies. And so most people are like on board straight away, and I don't really have to do much convincing. And in the wider world, I think that maybe it might seem very strange, and so I'd probably have to do a bit more explaining and talk about the propaganda around the whole diaper industry and how that's shifted from like the time that kids come out of diapers from the 70s to now, how it's expanded by a couple of years. It used to be kids were out of diapers by the age of 1 in the 70s, and now at this time the average is 3 to 4 years, and that kind of coincides with the arrival of the disposable diapers, and so that usually gets people's attention as well. But what it is in a nutshell is we're responding to babies' innate desire for hygiene and cleanliness. And there are very early signals straight away from birth that we can get to know and learn and then respond to. So we're not training them in a way of doing what we want them to do. We are noticing their needs for comfort, cleanliness, dryness, and we are responding accordingly to it by taking them to a vessel. At the newborn stage, we are holding them. We're not putting them on anything. We are holding them in a position. There are certain positions that we use, and allowing them to eliminate. And then using a diaper, rather than using it as a toilet, we are using it as a backup. So we still put our babies in diapers, especially when we're in, you know, a home environment that we're not living, you know, in a mud hut outside, you know, so it's not necessarily we're just saying no diapers ever, which to a lot of people that can feel like a step too much. So we're using it as a backup. So it's like a tablecloth. When you're eating food, you're not using your tablecloth to eat off, but you're using it as to protect your table. So the same thing with the diaper, it's like a backup. We're removing it, allowing the elimination to take place, and then putting it back on.
It's really makes so much sense when you say it. And yet the first time I heard about it, I think it was like in between my younger two and my older two, I really felt overwhelmed by the idea. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how can I possibly take the time to learn that when I've got two other young kids running around and this new baby? And it felt like something that was applicable for a long time ago, but not so much anymore. And now that I'm listening, you know, now I know a lot more about it, and I've listened, you know, to you, it makes so much sense from an environmental level, from a resource level, in terms of diapers cost a lot of money. Even washable diapers are a lot of money. It's an investment. And while I did that for my first child, they kind of were gross by the second child. I didn't necessarily love the idea of, you know, they do have a shelf life. So yeah, I mean, how, like you said, you live in a more alternative area and it's something that people are more comfortable with. But, you know, for those people who are just kind of discovering this, what's the easy entry? Like, talk a little bit about, I guess, the easiest ways to sort of get started, and then we can talk about how to, you know, integrate it right away.
Well, I always talk about EC being something that should be fun. And if there is a feeling of overwhelm, then we start really small and we build up successes. So there are certain ways you can enter in which might feel more appealing. There's basically the 4 routes in, which are signaling. So we're looking for signals. Timing. So we're learning the timing. Transition time. So like this is things like when they wake up, or when you before or after putting them in a high chair or a car seat. So those are just like, you know, they're not natural timing. It's more like a different type of timing. It's like timing for when we're shifting into doing a new activity, then we'll try. And then the 4th one is intuition, which is another nice one. It's like, I feel like you might need to go, and you're working on that. So those are the 4 routes in. And often the easiest way in would be the timings where you're changing activity, or upon wake up, for instance, is one. So there's a hormone that stops you peeing in your sleep, and when you start waking up, the hormone kind of switches off, and then that's when the bladder fills up and the urge to pee happens. So this is a really great one to start with, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to get a pee within a few minutes of waking with a newborn. And so it's simply like, when they start shifting around, you take the diaper off and offer the receptacle or the sink or whatever you want to use. And that's a really easy one for like building up that feeling of being successful, because you really generally are. Like, I mean, I don't think I've really not had success with that one, especially with a newborn. If they've been asleep for 45 minutes, they're going to need to pee. And then the same with doing that, like after a feed, for instance, is another time. Usually within 5 minutes after a feed, the baby's going to need to pee. Sometimes during the feed, well, that's a whole nother story. But that's another easy one to catch. And then, yeah, offering, just getting it in, building the habit by simply offering just before going into a high seat, a high chair or a car seat, which is, obviously slightly older babies. That would be another one, around, the timings that we control, or that, and so that's a really nice place to start and get that feeling of success. And then the other way that I really recommend is doing observation time. So in the first few weeks with your baby, when you're mostly in the bed, and in Ayurveda we recommend really you're in the bed in that time, so you are sleeping and lying by your baby and nursing, and hopefully getting your food brought to you by a lovely postpartum doula. And so this is the ideal time to do observation time and really start learning your baby's signals and the baby's timing as well, which will shift as they grow older. The first few months, the time between pees is really short. So it's like 10-15 minutes. So you're not gonna even try and catch all that pee. That's just not, some people go, oh, every other one I will attempt to try once I've learned the timing. I will offer a potty opportunity, we call it, every half an hour, let's say. But to begin with, those first few days, it's a lovely way to start. You simply create a surface in your bed, like with a good way is like something, waterproof underneath, and then a big towel. And then you're putting them with the bottom half undressed on this towel, and that's how they're laying. And then watching them and being with them, and you're not doing anything else during this time. So no trying to be useful, not on your phone, not trying to fold laundry or anything else. You're literally sitting with your baby and being with them. So it's a good way to learn your baby and really soak in your baby, but you're also doing this thing where you're really noticing their elimination. So it's kind of hitting two birds with one stone, let's say. And there are lots of different signals that you can be noticing in this, for like when they're eliminating or about to eliminate. And some babies go really still, some start to kick their legs, some start to like shift like side to side, and you just note it, and you don't try and get them on the potty or anything. You just let them eliminate, pee on the towel or whatever you've set up, like a waterproof pad, and then immediately, change it out so they can then start really noticing this difference between wet and dry and elimination, and before and after. Now I'm wet, I've like, this has happened, this feeling happens, then I'm wet, and then but then my person comes and takes the wetness away when I made the signal. So that's building trust, at the same time as building their own awareness of their own elimination needs and those very subtle feelings of before and after, which many older children, if they haven't had this experience of having their elimination needs met, they have to learn that much later. And some children don't have that concept of even knowing when they're peeing. If they're in these diapers that are so absorbent and the wetness is never felt, then it's really, it's something they have to learn in a different way. So this is really early learning of their own bodies and what's happening and the response from the caregiver when that's happening. So yeah, you're observing between, it can just be a 30-minute practice, when you feel you want to do it, the naked observation time, and you can log it as well. You could have a sheet and say, oh, they did this, and maybe that means this, and you can see, oh, well, they always do that before a pee, and that would change, over the first. But newborns, they have really good signals because that's innate. They're trying to say something, but if it gets ignored, the signals taper away. So by 4 or 5 months, usually signals are disappearing naturally anyway, but this is the window, this golden window we call it, for the signals can be stronger, and then we have the opportunity to respond to them, and the baby learns to trust us and go, oh, okay, this is happening, there's this communication happening between us, hence the elimination communication, and I am being cared for, and maybe if I make this signal more, then it will be clear and we'll get even better communication. And that really starts to happen. And so there's this early form of language almost developing.
Oh my gosh. I love so many things about this. Number one, how you began talking about it in the terms of it should be fun. Like it can be
Right.
fun.
Right.
This is not like, oh my gosh, this project that we're going to take on, and it's not it at all. And as I'm listening to you, I can really see how during the postpartum window, especially those first 2 weeks, when we're literally like, we want to be in bed anyway, and like everything we're doing is so pared down on a sensory level, except for the communication that we're developing with our babies. Like that is what we really want to hone into. And I remember that feeling like a little bit uncomfortable, like totally unplugging, like from the world, like trying not to be on my phone and trying not to like, yeah, it feels kind of weird, when we're so used to all of that. But actually applying that attention to the simplicity of like really, really noticing your baby is so aligned and makes such perfect sense. I love it. And I can see, yeah, I 100% wish I could turn back and do that over again, because I had a very different, I needed you, Samantha. I needed you there to,
but now you're sharing it with the world, Christine. So
it's very true.
You're doing your bit. Come on.
Yep. I'm 9 years too late, but that's okay. That's okay. We're moving forward and we're helping this to become a more understood practice. And in fact, like that connection piece where we're totally slowing down, we're not trying to direct anything, we're holding our babies and watching them. That is so vata pacifying, for like those of you who might not know Ayurveda yet. Like our program is through the Ayurvedic perspective. We're talking about the elements in nature. What's naturally elevated postpartum is vata dosha, extra air and space elements. So when we can apply things that are the opposite to that, things that are slow, things that are heavier, more solid, more grounded, and breathing and noticing and connecting with our babies is a practice that is extremely centering and grounding. So without the pressure of needing to do and to just be together, I can see that as therapeutic on a lot of levels, and not just I'm saving money on diapers.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great entryway, we're going to save money. But actually, when you start doing the practice and you see the strong bonding that happens, like the stronger bonding, the quicker bonding, and it's like, oh wow, this is something that you can't really explain. It has to be felt. And it's EC is about the process and the journey. It's not goal orientated. Like we're taking that out. So yeah, the building of connection, the synchronizing with our babies, we're learning them on such a level where the communication and the language building is happening much earlier. So when we do take them, after we've done some observation and I feel like I kind of know a little bit now, we can start, especially with pooping. Pooping, as we call it, one of the easy catches. You can get that down in a few weeks. Like, I definitely know they're about to poop,
Yeah.
So when you take them and you have a pot, like if you're still in bed, you can just have a little pot or over the sink, because it's, it's not solid poop at this time. Mums know. So either way, you're then making a noise, or you're saying a word association, but you know, at the beginning I recommend a noise, so like a little grunt, you know, and then you're building sound association, which is a type of language building. And often you'll find they'll start making that sound later when they're toddling around, that it will come with them too, and you'll have this little language before real words. So with pooping, we do the grunting, or we can say the word that we want. And then peeing, we do the ps sound. So it's a really early way of building the language, and the communication between us, which can feel, you know, it can feel a long time before we get to that point. But we have the sign language, you know, at around 6 months, but this is earlier. This is early sound association language building. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the Dunstan baby sound, like the cries. You know, he said that there was like the 5 cries. It's just the sound just before the cries start, and they're universal, and one of them is uncomfortable, and this is the one that babies will make just before they need to eliminate. And in a newborn, it can often be like a third of the cries they're making is around being uncomfortable. And generally that can be about the elimination need. So there's all these little language things that can be invisible if we don't know about them. You know, we just think, oh, why are they crying? You know, we try all the things, feeding, and in our culture, we know that babies are, you know, they're communicating around their desire to be fed or being wet. And so why not the need to eliminate? Like, it's very body centric. Like, being hungry is, you know, I can feel that in my body, but we all can feel when we need to eliminate. So why not babies? So it's a whole paradigm shift of like the way the ability of the baby to communicate their needs is much more wide than we maybe have been taught.
Oh, of course. I mean, if we are just relying on the diaper to do the work of that, it's not necessarily so important, you know, or feel so urgent for us to pay attention to.
Right.
I'm curious about any connection between improved elimination function and digestion, like fewer digestive issues potentially in baby, when their grown-up is practicing elimination communication with them. Like, if they know, like, I'm just wondering about, you know, babies who may just feel so uncomfortable in a diaper,
Right.
or feeling wet and dirty and maybe not wanting to do it.
Right.
Grown-ups may not.
Yeah,
they're constipated because they don't feel like they can easily release.
I mean, I would say that's definitely true. Being uncomfortable and wanting to eliminate and then having to do it, but like holding and doing, that's stressful. And I feel like any kind of stress is building in the body and creating issues with, like, you know, the Vata dosha, that is, right? So constipation. Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely true. And I wanted to say something about that as well. What is it? It will come back. But yes, no, for sure. So there's this kind of myth that we talked about when you take the diaper off at a diaper change, and the cold air makes them pee when you're changing their diapers. So how many of us have been covered in pee when we take the diaper off our child? And that's actually not the reason. You know, the reason is that it's like, I'm finally free from this diaper, and now it feels natural that I'm gonna eliminate, because there's nothing there's nothing pushing it to my skin. You know, I'm gonna have it there, like sitting in my own waste. So there's a natural inclination to like, pee as soon as the diaper comes off. So that's another time to try as well. It just when you want to start is at diaper changes. You're changing the diaper anyway, the diaper is off. Try holding your baby over a vessel or the sink and see what happens.
I love it. Do you feel like there was, how much did you know about EC when you started practicing it with your own son? And what do you feel like you learned about it from your personal experience?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to see it in practice with mums around me before I was pregnant. So I lived with a lady who would take her naked, and she didn't do any diapers. She just had the baby like crawling around, and she would stop mid-sentence and just walk up to the baby, pick the baby up and held her over their little deck and the baby would pee, and she would make the sound psh, and the baby would pee off the side of the deck. And I was just talking to her, and she hadn't been looking at the baby or anything. It was just this. Then that's the intuitive part that kicks in, and I feel like that may take a little while to really trust. And she didn't miss a beat. She'd then carry on talking to me. Baby would go back on the ground, and so that was my first experience of seeing it. And I guess I didn't really even know what it was called or anything. I was like, wow, she's just not doing diapers, and she knew exactly when her baby was going to pee. That's amazing. I thought it was some magical thing. And then I think I started looking into it and doing more research when I became pregnant, and found the woman that taught me, Andrea Olson. She has a whole huge following and courses and books. So she has a book, and I got the book and I read it from cover to cover, and I was like, got my charts, and I was very let's say I took it as a real an exercise in being perfect, and I was going to do it right, and having all the equipment, and I was going to have, I was going to from day one catch everything. And so my own experience, and then going into my postpartum window and realizing how that kind of mentality wasn't really helpful. It was like causing me stress. So I had to pretty much like start from ground zero and really feel into what was achievable for me and what felt good and what felt fun. And I found another lady who was teaching like a lot more, let's say, holistic way and soft way, and kind of really talking about the psychology of the bonding and how it should just feel really nurturing. And it wasn't about the practical sides of saving diapers and doing this whole other way and being better than everyone else. It was like, you want to bond with your baby, and this is a beautiful way to build trust, and so do what feels good for both of you, and what's helping the baby feel comfortable. So I think at that point I then like toned down the way I was approaching it, and was more easy on myself, and went for the easy catches. And we went in and out of an EC practice. I mean, we were consistent with it. Don't get me wrong, we were very consistent with it, but also we weren't it wasn't all the be all and end all, so, and that felt better. That felt like more natural and easeful. And then I started sharing it with friends around me, and we would discuss our experiences, and I would be learning from others, and it became a lot more personal, let's say, right? Like a personal practice of how I did it and the tools that I like to use, and if it was helpful at night, like how would we do it at night? And so that was like my own journey with it. But I feel like I learned a lot more just in how beneficial it could be with the psychological side and the bonding side. And just during my postpartum practice, when I was working with many babies and seeing like the different ways the babies would respond to the practice, and yeah, that was really interesting, because I saw that, you know, there was lots of different ways of doing it and patching it together and really making your own. So it became then I brought it into my own practice, and something that I would guide, and because I would be there every day with my clients, so I could join in their exploration and help them out with any questions, and see what was most helpful, when I could just like step back and allow them to take it their own way, and then allow them to come to me with like, you know, queries and things, rather than being like, this is how you do it, you know, because people would take it in their own ways, and it was beautiful to see.
It's so true, because I just love so much the synchronicity of, you know, the postpartum window. So much of what the birth giver, the mom, is going through, the baby is also going through in their own ways. And so when I am listening, I'm really seeing it as this shared experience, you know, with our babies. Like, we have our own things that we're paying attention to in terms of elimination, and, you know, listening to our own bodies in terms of all of the healing that's happening. But also, like, when we can really share it in this similar way, frankly, like, you know, we're paying attention to the same things for ourselves as to our babies. And not only that, but you layer on what you were just saying about it being such an individual experience. So the way that one person experiences it with their baby, you know, their baby is going to have different signals. They may have different timing slightly. It's all okay. And it should be, I love the idea of it starting as this, you know, simple thing that grows. And as it grows, then we grow in confidence, and our babies grow in trust. And it becomes this really strong level of intuition and communication, like your friend who just had a sense and she knew, and her baby peed right then. And she didn't have to be like staring at her baby, learning the signals anymore, because she'd already gone through all of that building. And it's just another example of the synchronicity to me of the qualities of postpartum care, and going slow and healing together and integrating into this new role as parent and baby in the world together, and doing it in a way that's totally unique to you. And that's great. And you as a caregiver, being able to have the ability to kind of encourage and coach people in the ways that are empowering for them is just really awesome. Yeah. So Samantha is going to be doing a talk really a little bit more geared towards the caregivers, and how we can sort of be able to support families with elimination communication, if that's something that they're interested in trying. But even if it's like, I like thinking of it not like this camp that, okay, we're in the elimination communication camp and now we're on this path. It's more like we're on this journey to like really intuitively bond and get to know our babies and all of their needs and functions. And how beautiful is that? Mm-hmm. And this just kind of harmoniously goes right along with it.
Yeah, and something else I wanted to bring in was that it's something that the other partner can take part in at a time when often, you know, the breastfeeding mother is, you know, center stage with the newborn. Like the infant massage that we teach in Ayurvedic care, this is something that the partner can take part in. They don't just have to do diaper changes. They could be doing observation and really lying down with their babies and smiling at each other, and, you know, look into each other's eyes and being like, this is my job right now. This is useful. I'm bonding and I'm noticing, and I'm really seeing and learning. And babies respond so well to that. to being seen. They want to be seen. They want to know that they're the center stage. And, you know, it can be hard for one person to hold that 24/7. So yeah, having a partner or another caregiver involved and learning the practice alongside, and, you know, it's something that you can be like feeding back to each other as well. If you know, you are in partnership, just like, oh, I noticed this, so maybe try this when this happens, and like, oh, good idea, you know. So it's like something you can have as a little collective journey with your household. And yeah, my partner loved doing it. He was all in, and he would notice these like really subtle things. I think it's this left leg thing that happens just before, and I'm like, wow, okay, cool, okay, we'll go with that. And yeah, so he felt like it was a really another way that he could be involved in those early days.
And how empowering is that, you know, for partners? Oftentimes they're like, I want to be helpful, but I don't know how, or this is really you're the one who has all the intuitive things, or but also like releasing that hormone, that love hormone, the oxytocin. I can imagine that taking the time, partners, just like you said, laying and looking in each other's eyes and really honing in, just like we experience doing the oil massage. That's an oxytocin dump right there.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, and I also just really love the idea of it, you know, it's a shared, we're in this together. We're all in this together, families, and the more practices and ways of deepening that connection, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the body centric, you know, very intuitive, tribal things that bring that really deep sense of connection with us as animals, as beings, as part of nature, things that we potentially have lost contact with, and bringing back in. It's really simple, you know, it's body centric, it's physiological, and I enjoy that a lot, the sense of embodiment that this can really bring in.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for spending this time. I'm really excited to talk more about this in our community at our upcoming talk. And for those of you who are listening to this in advance of that, please join us. This is a free educational talk that's hosted by the Center for Sacred Window Studies, but facilitated by Samantha Veitch. And we will, in the show notes, make sure you have all of her information. And I'll also add some of the resources that she shared in this talk. Samantha, thank you for all the amazing work you're doing in the world and your caregiving. And it's just such a pleasure to be connected with you all these years.
Oh, well, thank you, Christine. I really appreciate you and your work and starting me off on this path to become a postpartum doula. And it really is something that I feel is part of my dharma in the world, and that I can now layer in other things that feel personal and practical to me and make it my own feels really good. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. We'll see you all next time.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. And our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.